Among the Ibos of Nigeria by George Thomas Basden. Chapter 5. Child Life. Those who strive to combat infantile mortality in England are confronted with many difficulties, and probably the greatest of all are those arising from the ignorance, prejudice and superstition of the parents, though the last term may not be acknowledged. When we inquire into the conditions of child life amongst the Igbo people, we soon discover that the methods adopted in dealing with young children are so drastic that it is surprising not that many die, but that any survive at all. That so many do pull through demonstrates the infant's tenacious hold upon life. From the very first, the Igbo baby must run the gauntlet of all manner of perils, some the outcome of deliberate intention to injure, others the result of ignorance and superstition. In many parts, if the infant fails to cry vigorously at birth, it forfeits its life, the omission being considered an evil omen. A similar fate befalls children whose mothers die before they are about 6 months old. The birth of twins is a calamity of the first magnitude, and spells disaster for them and the unfortunate mother. The underlying idea is that it has been ordained that mankind should propagate his species by single births, in contradistinction to animals. For a woman to bear more than one child at a birth is to degrade humanity to the level of the brute creation. Plural offspring is nature's law for goats and dogs. For a woman to imitate them in this respect fills the Igbo with unspeakable disgust. Mother and children are cursed and subjected to contempt and ill treatment. The woman makes no attempt to defend herself or her children. She accepts the situation dumbly and merely wonders why she, especially, has been selected for such dishonor. Her hatred of her offspring is as bitter as that of her relatives and neighbors. She turns from them with loathing and despair and, unless compelled, will make no effort to nurse them. It is believed that in some mysterious manner there has been an unholy alliance with an evil spirit during sleep, and the second child is the result. With all haste, the abominations must be removed. The children are thrust into an old water pot without even a passing thought for the pain inflicted. Coconut fibre or leaves are thrown in to cover them, and the pot is then deposited in some lonely spot in the bush. The newly born infants receive no attention whatsoever. They are cast away at once, as unclean in the sight of gods and men. It is astonishing how long some of the children survive after being treated thus, this extraordinary vitality being due, perhaps, to the fact that the umbilical cord is not severed. In one case of castaways with which I had to deal, they had been lying a whole night, and the greater part of the next day, in the bush, at least 16 hours. One died from injuries either deliberately inflicted or received when forced through the neck of the pot. The other and uppermost child had escaped serious injury and has since grown into a sturdy boy, mother and child having been kept under supervision for some months at the medical mission. This method of dealing with twins is reckoned to be the only one open to the parents, as by acting thus they hope to avert further calamity. To permit the children to live would amount to a direct challenge to the malignant spirits, and the parents, and indeed the whole community, would be exposed to all manner of dangers. There is no alternative for the Igbo but to cast them out. This is the kind of custom that legislation finds very difficult to eliminate, as the influence of the supernatural is much stronger than that exercised by human instrumentality, and it is in such circumstances that missionary effort can and does play an important part in the evolution of the savage. Polygamy is the recognized rule, and some of the marital customs which arise from this institution are peculiar. For example, It is an unforgivable sin for two wives to give birth to children on the same day. As with twins, mothers and children are made to suffer the full penalty for such misdemeanors. No provision is made preparatory to the birth of the child. The prospective mother continues her daily round in the most unconcerned manner. Consequently, it not infrequently happens that the child is born at an inconvenient time and place, perhaps whilst the woman is at the farm or by the roadside during the journey to or from market. When confinement takes place at home, a native midwife may attend, and she is assisted by the grandmother of one of the parents, the maternal one preferably, or by some other ancient dame. For the first day or two after birth, the mother does not nurse the child. The women declare that the first milk is bitter and quite unfit for the child. To test the quality of the milk, ants are used. A small quantity is expressed and placed on the ground. If the ants refrain from tasting it, or if they consume it and death follows, then it is assumed that the milk possesses poisonous qualities. If they take it greedily, then it will prove to be wholesome food for the child. Instead of the mother nursing her child from the hour of birth, the old woman in attendance attempts to suckle it, a custom as disgusting as it is fickle. Coverings for the newly born infant are not forthcoming. In the tropics, this is not a serious matter, but still the cold clay floor does not improve the chances of the child any more, perhaps, than its being held in and afterwards washed in cold water immediately after birth. The babe must always sleep with its mother. The introduction of a crib by the wife of a West Indian missionary raised very grave doubts as to whether she cared for her child. To put the baby upon a shelf, as if it were a common utensil, was utterly incompatible with the local ideas of affection. To neglect the child thus showed a complete want of love, and a scant respect even for duty. The rite of circumcision is usually performed on both boys and girls between the 3rd and 8th day after birth. The time, however, varies in different towns, the operation being often postponed until the age of puberty is reached. It is the common practice to postpone the rite on the western side of the Niger. No religious rites whatever accompany the operation, which is performed by both men and women without restriction. Naming the child is an important function. It is a mark of honor and respect to be invited to give a name, and the privilege is usually reserved for one of the elder relatives. 2 or more names may be given, the first almost invariably taking the form Nwa, child, in combination with the name of the day on which the child was born. For example, Nwa Eke, the child of Eke Day. The second name is suggested by the display of some characteristic trait, or some resemblance, fancied or otherwise, to a deceased member of the family. The Igbo believes that all children are reincarnations of beings who have already passed through a lifetime in this world. Hence, a man will point to a little girl and gravely inform you that she is his mother reborn into the world. The child will consequently be given the name of the relative it is supposed to resemble, and as such will receive a joyful welcome back to earth. It is a time of great rejoicing and feasting, and large quantities of palm wine are consumed in celebrating the occasion. When there is a dedication of the child, it takes place on the same day as the naming. Ordinarily, this rite is confined to boys. The dibia, medicine man, detects some sign which convinces him that this baby is a reincarnation of a former dibia, and hence, ipso facto, he must be dedicated to the medical cult. The boy lives with his parents until he is about 8 years of age, and is then transferred to the care of the dibia. As he grows up, he is gradually initiated into all the mysteries of the profession. This is the manner in which the ranks of the dibias are recruited. Besides a supposed resemblance to a departed dibia and the consequent dedication to that service, children of either sex may be devoted to the alusi, idols. This is always the case when a child is born within the precincts of an idol house. Such births may occur, as already stated, when the mother is unable to reach home confinement. The child is claimed by the priest on behalf of the alusi and is consecrated, married to it for life. The cutting of a baby's first tooth is a source of keen interest to the community and of serious anxiety to the parents, for upon it hangs the issues of life and death for the child. Should it pierce the lower gum, then all is satisfactory, and it is the signal for great rejoicing and mutual congratulation. On the contrary, should it prove to be an upper tooth, the omen is bad, and the child's fate will be similar to that of twins. The unfortunate child, now a few months old, after being thrust into the water pot, is thrown into the bad bush and is condemned to endure terrible agony before death ensues. The prevailing superstitions instigate the people to commit these foul deeds, and in their religious beliefs the root principles for these customs must be sought. It is owing to their anxiety lest they themselves should offend, and therefore suffer at the hands of the evil spirits, that they are prompted to sacrifice their offspring. They simply obey the dictates of fear. Babies are handled in a very crude fashion. To lift a child, it is grasped by the forearm and swung up into the desired position. Yet in spite of this apparent carelessness, shoulder joints do not appear to suffer, and the children themselves show no signs of pain. Hot water is used for the morning bath for very young babies, the idea being that this will assist in the massage and limb stretching operations. Occasionally the proceedings are distinctly curious, and I cannot do better than give the following description, culled from the observations of the missionary in charge of the twin rescue home at Onitsha. This account will further illustrate the Igbo ideas on the management of newly born babies. The mother sits upon a low seat with her apparatus handy. This consists of a small cooking pot containing liquid in which a certain herb has been stewed, and a bundle of fibre obtained from a native loofah. She places the baby upon its back in her lap, and then applies the concoction internally and externally. For the internal application, the left hand is placed funnel-wise at the corner of the child's mouth, with the little finger pressing on the nostrils. It is thus forced to keep its mouth open in order to breathe, and the liquid is then allowed to trickle through the curved hand into the mouth and thence down the throat. The poor baby, meanwhile, protesting as vigorously as its restricted opportunities will permit, and appearing to be in imminent danger of suffocation. The child having been forced to swallow the dose, the loofah is now dipped into the liquid and strenuously applied to the body. The bones of the skull are pressed together, and the spine and limbs are massaged in a more or less methodical manner. The ablutions completed, the mother blows into the eyes, nostrils, mouth, and ears with a force one would think must produce paralysis of the tiny brain. Finally, streaming wet, the babe is put down to rest, sometimes on a banana leaf beside the fire, sometimes on a piece of cloth, and often simply on the bare floor with nothing but a rough pad beneath the head. This treatment, Spartan though it be, is nevertheless beneficial, for the children thrive under it, and in cases where European and Ibo methods have been practiced simultaneously on 2 infants, the greater success of the native system has been clearly demonstrated. For children's disorders, native remedies are applied with varying effects. Suffice here to give one prescription noted down by the superintendent of the home, viz., that adopted in the case of a wasting infant. 7 ants cut in halves, mixed with proportions of red pepper, chalk, red ochre and palm oil. This preparation to be well rubbed into the body, when the tiny insect infecting the skin will come out in the semblance of small white hairs. It must be stated as a simple fact, neither for nor against native medicines, that very beneficial results have followed this treatment. After a few applications, the child has visibly fattened, whether from the effect of the remedy or of the massage cannot be confidently asserted. For babies in good health, the morning, warm bath is followed by massage and stretching of the limbs. The muscles are vigorously squeezed and the joints well stretched. The nose is also pressed and pulled to induce it to assume what is considered the orthodox shape. Water is poured into the child's mouth and nostrils, and often the baby is held by the ankles and, upside down, is shaken in order, so it is alleged, to drive the water to all parts of the body. After food has been taken, it is a common custom to toss the child, throwing it into the air and catching it again. This is done with the idea of providing healthy exercise after meals. Little children are taken by the ankles and swung round in circles, chiefly for amusement. Small boys are tossed and swung round also in order to develop fearlessness. One of the objects of half choking the baby by pouring water into the nostrils is to prepare it for the first sensations when learning to swim. As the young native mother is expected to carry out the full household duties, including the perpetual marketing, she must carry the baby about with her, or leave it in the care of others. If she decide for the former plan, in the more civilized centers, the woman takes a loincloth in her hand. Then, leaning well forward, she swings the baby, with its arms and legs outstretched, across the lower part of her back. The cloth is then thrown dexterously over the child, and the ends brought round to the front, pulled up tightly, the edges rolled, and the ends tucked in. The baby appears to ride in a precarious manner, but in reality is held quite securely, and in this position it rests and sleeps as peacefully as in a cot. The mother's hands are perfectly free, and, with a little assistance in raising or lowering her basket, she will carry a heavy load upon her head to and from the market. If not going any appreciable distance, the mode of carrying a child is to swing it up by the arm, and to place it astride upon the hip, the infant assuming a semi-recumbent attitude and clinging tightly with one hand. The child is usually suckled whilst in this position. When a woman decides to leave her child at home, it is put into the care of one of the younger members of the household. Where possible, a boy nurse is chosen for a boy and a girl for a girl baby. As the Ibo mother does not concern herself about regularity in feeding the child, she goes on with her occupation regardless of the needs of the baby left at home. The youngster who has charge of it manages very well for a time. When hunger begins to trouble the baby, and it asserts the fact in the usual manner, recourse is had to the water cure for crying. Every time the child begins to cry, the nurse promptly pours water into the open mouth, and the process is repeated as required until the mother returns. There is no fixed time for weaning. In fact, the custom does not really exist, infants being naturally fed until they themselves refuse the milk. In this connection, it should be noted that it is contrary to the custom of the Ibos for a woman to bear a child until the interval of at least 3 years has elapsed since the birth of the previous, if still living, child. Hence, the infant is suckled for a considerable period after it has begun to run about. Indeed, it behaves very much after the manner of the little goats running about the compound. Parents manifest deep fondness for their children. What appears to be inexpressibly cruel on occasions does not arise from savage, inhuman propensities, but is the logical and inevitable outcome of their creed. In their earliest years, the children are very attractive, with pleasant features, chubby faces, and large, dark, liquid eyes. When quite young, the predominant peculiarities of the Negro type are not pronounced. Children are priceless possessions, and no man can have too many. The more he has, the more will he be respected and envied by the community. Between actual brothers and sisters, and between children of the one father but by different mothers, there are strong ties of affection. Each must and will help the others always, and by all means. The mother's love for the child, and vice versa, are perhaps the most remarkable elements in the family relationships. The son may not always treat his mother kindly, although not to do so is abhorrent to the Igbo mind, and very seldom indeed is the mother neglected or treated disrespectfully. But the son never forgets his mother. Invariably, she is the first in his affections, and she is his confidant in all the serious affairs of his life. In times of danger, the mother is thought of before even wife and children. Wives are always to be had. He cannot get a second mother. From the age of about 3 years, the Igbo child is reckoned as sufficiently advanced to be left more or less to its own devices. It begins to consort freely with children of its own age or company, otu, and to take its share in work and play. Boys and girls soon separate, each sex being intent on its own games and occupations, the one quite independently of the other. The lot of the boys is preferable to that of the girls. Pleasure and enjoyment are the special prerogatives of the former, as befits the future lords and masters. It is sufficient for the girls that they minister to their male relations. That and the bearing of children are the sole reasons for which they are created. The open street, Ilo, is the children's playground, a spot well suited for the purpose, as it is generally covered with fine sand, several inches in depth. Huge trees afford abundant shelter from the sun, and the absence of all but pedestrian traffic secures for the little ones playgrounds where they can pursue their pastimes in perfect safety and enjoyment. It is a charming sight to watch the children playing in the sand amidst the sunny glades. Clothing is superfluous, and therefore conspicuous by its absence. The children being thus quite unhampered in their movements and free from all anxiety as to the ripping of garments. At an early age, the boys engage in regular exercises, of which there are many forms. They obtain little bows and arrows, and they exercise their skill on small birds and the multicolored lizards which dart about in all directions. A common form of children is that of turning somersaults, both by means of a primitive springboard and without artificial assistance. The springboard, though simple, is very effective in operation. It consists of the butt end of a large palm frond fixed firmly in the ground at a slight backward angle. The lad takes a short, swift run and brings one foot down sharply on the tip of the palm stem, and this, being very elastic, shoots the boy into the air, and he lands on his feet some distance away, having turned a complete somersault en route. It is quite fascinating to watch a string of lads following one another in rapid succession. Many become very expert at the game, and after a time dispense with the springboard altogether. Small boys soon begin to imitate their elder brothers in wrestling and dancing. The result of all this physical outdoor exercise is that the muscles are well developed, and the lads become strong and wiry. In the season, boys accompany their elders to the farms and get an insight into the business of raising produce, the amount of work actually done by them varying according to the disposition and circumstances of the parents. They are also called upon to help in building operations, the task usually allotted them being to carry the lumps of puddled clay from the pit to the builders. They become useful whilst still extraordinarily young, assimilating a wonderful stock of practical knowledge. They become familiar with certain aspects of bird, animal, and plant life, but cannot be characterized as observant of things unconnected with their own personal affairs. The women and girls are not so free, though they enjoy themselves well enough in their own way. Almost as soon as they can walk, girls take a share in the household duties. They begin by carrying water, collecting firewood, rubbing floors, assisting in the preparation of food, and then, later on, accompanying their elders to the markets where they are initiated into the technicalities of trade. It must not be assumed that the life of a small girl is an unhappy one. It is true that girls early develop a measure of stolid independence, or rather the responsibilities of daily life are taken up seriously at a very early age. But they have their amusements and pastimes, and are quite capable of enjoying themselves. They are especially fond of a certain form of step dancing. The partners face each other, beat time by clapping their hands, and the one must anticipate the movements of the other and be ready to respond. Failure to meet the correct movement is hailed with shouts and laughter by the assembled company, and a new partner comes in to try her skill. In the native home life, there is nothing of the nature of discipline. The children do exactly as they choose and are only punished when they have been exceptionally aggravating. This laxity does not improve their morals, and there are incidents of child life which are sad to contemplate. But little attempt is made to check the children, and it is quite a new experience for them to come under school discipline, and there, in another atmosphere, to learn to bring their natural impulses under control.